What's good, everybody, man? This is your guy, Manny, and this is the Talking Sports with Manny channel. Whether you're watching on Newsbreak, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, it's all love, man. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm going to run my intro. But before I run my intro, this is the first episode for the Backrow Washington Commanders Show. Actually, the Backrow Commanders Show. I'm excited for this first episode. A lot's been going on. I've been, focused on family. So that's why I've not been able to provide a lot of, content for you guys. So I'm excited. It's going to be a fun episode. On this episode, I'm going to be breaking down the season that was, like as promised. But this is a super, super late episode. I was supposed to have dropped this video like 2 weeks ago, but, y'all just have mercy on me. So, yeah, man, we're going to be talking about the season that was. We're going to talk about numbers, stats, games, expectations, things that made us happy, mad, sad, angry. Those are all the things that come with being a Washington fan. So without further ado, here's the intro. All right, man, let's get it. This is going to be a super, super short episode. So if you're driving to work, sorry, this is not going to be a long episode, but we're going to get to every single topic, man. Let's talk about Washington football. Let's talk about who performed well. So we look at Taylor Heidi. Taylor Heidi was a guy that, performed well prior into this past season when he played versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the playoffs, right? He played really, really good. So when you look at Taylor Heinicke, he does not get paid a lot of money. Okay, I consider Taylor Heinicke one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the best backup quarterback in the NFL. He gave you 3,000 yards, 419 yards passing. He gave you 20 touchdowns. Granted, he had a lot of interceptions, which I'm going to get to, but there were some games that Taylor Heinicke was able to save the day. And with Taylor Heinicke, he is what he is. He plays with heart. He kind of like zeroes in on where he's going to go with the ball. And with the limited weapons that Taylor Heinicke had, 20 touchdowns is not bad. Now, what is bad is the 15 interceptions. He's a gunslinger that doesn't have a gunslinging arm, if that makes any sense. So when you look at Taylor Heinicke, he gave me 3,400 yards, almost 3,500 yards. And mind you, he played in 16 games. Came into that game inside that first game when Ryan Fitzpatrick got hurt after playing a few minutes. Ryan Fitzpatrick had 13 yards and then he was done, to never be seen again as the Washington quarterback. So we're going to talk about some acquisitions that were good, some were not good. But then when you look at the stats and the numbers, it's gonna shock you. It's gonna confuse you because there were some players that fans were not happy about, including Taylor. But when you look at the numbers, based off of what we paid for Taylor Heinicke, he was productive. It wasn't the best, but he was productive. We're going to go through each game. We're going to go through games where we look like we can do something and games where we just look so bad. Shout out to Antonio Gibson with his first 1,000-yard rushing season. He had 1,000 yards and 37 yards rushing. Terry McLaurin had 1,053 yards receiving. Cole Holcomb led us with 142 tackles. Shout out to Cole Holcomb. The whole linebacking core was a mess. And I'll be having another episode just dealing with the linebacker, with the linebacker situation. You look at Bobby Mccain. He led us with interceptions with 4. And that's one of those acquisitions that when we got him, he was getting burned. He was getting toasted. It was a lot of drama around Bobby Mccain that I'm not going to get into on this particular episode, but he did lead us with 4 interceptions. Now, let's break down some of the other numbers out there. Outside of Antonio Gibson, the next leading rusher was Taylor Heinicke with 313 yards rushing, and then he also had 1 rushing score. The running game was terrible. We didn't get much out of Jared Patterson, but he didn't play much. When he did play, he played okay. He was averaging 3.9 yards per carry. So that's not bad. That's not bad at all. J.D. McKissick, very sporadic here and there as a runner, but more effective as a passer. I mean, as a receiving threat. DeAndre Carter pitched in. There should be no reason why DeAndre Carter is getting 17 carries. I mean, he was productive with those 17 carries, but it just goes to show you how terrible the run game really was. Let's say, for example, that Antonio Gibson gets hurt. I mean, he was hurt. He played all 16 games, even with injury. But the biggest knock on Antonio Gibson this season was that he had 5 fumbles, and he lost 3 of them. I mean, the guy was putting the ball on the ground. Like, Antonio Gibson was somebody who seemed like they didn't want nice things. You'll give him a gift, and he'll just throw it into the trash. That's all he was doing, fumbling the ball. And when he wasn't fumbling the ball, he played well or he didn't play so well. I mean, the one thing I can say about Antonio Gibson this season was that he was able to expand his game in terms of being a wide receiver this season. I'm going to get into those numbers. Antonio Gibson had 42 receptions for 294 yards and 3 scores. So I love that from Antonio Gibson. He had almost 1,400 yards from scrimmage. And also, he was able to be productive in terms of scoring the ball. He had 10 touchdowns total this year. Last year, he obviously had more rushing touchdowns, but another productive season for Antonio Gibson. But what I would like for the team to do is to go ahead and grab another running back that can get those tough yards. He struggled when it came to 4th and 1s and things of that nature. He was not hitting the holes like he's supposed to. Even though he's a big back, we have to remember it's going to take him time to really grasp that running back position. Shout out to Terry McLaurin once again, 1,000 yards. Our next best wide receiver was J.D. McKissick, a running back. That's terrible. Adam Humphries was next. Then Carter. I mean, the pass game was just pedestrian. The pass game was terrible. So for Taylor Heinicke to do what he did with this group, Adam Humphries, J.D. McKissick missed a lot of games, and that was like a big part of your offense. He only played 11 games. So what were we doing in those other 6 games that J.D. McKissick did not play? I mean, it was bad. It was bad. Ricky Seals pitched in where he could. John Bates pitched in where he could. Cam Sims, Logan Thomas, we got him. He was gone. We got him. He was gone. I mean, we didn't know what we had. We still don't know what we have in De'Ami Brown because Taylor Heinicke is not a guy that can get the ball to De'Ami Brown. He's a deep threat. We need somebody who can, throw the ball and expand, the field. And I mean, this receiving core, when you look at it, you got tight ends, Ricky Seals, John Bates, who I loved, who really stepped up, Logan Thomas. Some question marks there. Maybe Ricky Seals doesn't come back next season. At the wide receiver position, you have Terry McLaurin, Adam Humphries, DeAndre Carter, Cam Sims, who did not play much. So you don't know what you have. So this is going to be another year that we're looking for another wide receiver, and the cheapest way to do it is through the draft. I don't want to get too ahead of myself on what my plans are for the draft just yet, but when you look at the tackles, you had Cole Holcomb, who really held it down for us as a linebacker. He had 2 interceptions. I mean, he had a touchdown score. He had 142 tackles. He had a sack. He was all over the place. And Cole Holcomb was really, really, really good for us. Cole Holcomb is a really, really good starter. I don't see star potential out of Cole Holcomb, but he's a very, very serviceable starter. Very, very, I'll say above average player. He's above average or a little bit above average. Cameron Curl, he played great. And mind you, he played a limited role to where they're moving him all over the place. They really didn't even know where they wanted to have Cam Curl play. One thing that I did not realize about Cam Curl this season, I was looking at the numbers wrong. I was like 5 sacks. No, Cam Curl had a sack this year. He had no interceptions. He played a lot of Buffalo nickel. He played a lot of linebacker. He played a lot of strong safety. So he was always around the box for us and, making plays. He played 16 out of the 17 games, which is good. He had 99 tackles. Solid. It doesn't get any better than that. Cameron Curl is a guy that I can see ascending towards stardom. I can see him as a star in this league. Hopefully next season he takes another big jump. We don't know what happens with Landon Collins. Maybe he leaves, maybe he stays. But in the games that Landon Collins was healthy, which was 13 games, he had 81 tackles in 13 games. That's production. That's solid. He played a lot of linebacker for us, and he did really, really good. He also had 3 sacks. He had 2 interceptions. I mean, Landon Collins was great for us last season. Say what you want to say about Landon Collins. He was great. Now we look at Kendall Fuller, who had some good moments, had some bad moments. He had 77 tackles. So we had a lot of tackles because we couldn't really guard a lot of people. We couldn't really cover a lot of people. So that resulted to us making a lot of tackles. Jamin Davis, a guy that a lot of people were mad at, we drafted him to be a middle linebacker, and that's not what he does. He's an outside linebacker. I think he would flourish as a will. But we'll see what happens with Jamin Davis. Maybe we draft another one this year. We don't know. Maybe we pick up somebody in the draft or even free agency that can come in and be a middle linebacker. That's the biggest need for the Washington football team right now. But Jamin Davis, when you put him out in space, he showed some flash. He did some things. He had a sack this year. He had 76 tackles. So, he was, 5th in tackles on the team, which isn't bad. He played 16 out of the 17 games. It just is what it is. It just is what it is when you're talking about Jamin Davis. Hopefully he takes another step next year. People are writing him off. People are calling him a bust. But I remember people calling Montez Sweat a bust his first year. So let's see what happens moving forward into year 2. Jonathan Allen was amazing this season. He played the best football I've ever seen him play. And I'm glad that the team was able to pay him because he deserved every single dollar that he got. 9 sacks. He had 61 tackles. He had pressures out this world. He had tackles for loss out this world. The guy was phenomenal. Outside of Aaron Donald, Daron Payne was the next best thing. That's just how I feel about that situation. Daron Payne, he showed some flash here and there, but he's a guy that we need to figure out what are we doing with Daron Payne. Is he going to be back next season? Does he go into a piece that we trade for a quarterback? Is he part of the plan between him and Sweat? Possibly you can only keep one, but we'll see what happens. Obviously this year we lost Chase Young and we lost Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat did end up with 5 sacks this year. I felt like he could have had more, but with injuries and the tragic situation that happened with his family, just a lot that happened, man. Jeremy Reeves, same thing. Just a lot of things happened to this team emotionally, physically, mentally. So hopefully the team comes back stronger next year. But yeah, when you look at, let's look at the interception side of the ball. Landon Collins had 2, Cole Holcomb had 2, Bobby McCain, love him, hate him, he had 4. I think the team improves from Bobby McCain next year. Maybe they bring him back on a 1-year deal while adding another safety, being that we don't know what we're going to do about the safety position, and we need that long, rangy, free safety kind of guy. William Jackson III was a disappointment. He only played 12 out of the 17 games. He had 2 interceptions. He's not really an interception kind of guy. He's a lockdown guy. Played a lot of zone. Put the guy in the best fit, best situation, which is man to man. Benjamin St-Juste had a lot of good promise, and then he got hurt. He had the concussion. So let's see if he can bounce back from that. Torrey McIntyre was another guy that I like. So we need to rebuild the secondary, especially adding another corner as well as adding a rangy safety. When you look at the special teams, DeAndre Carter was amazing. He should have been in a Pro Bowl, but it is what it is. Joey Sly, I think we can build off of him when he did play, which was 6 games. He was 12 for 12 from the field. He was 1 for 1 from the 50-yard field goals or more. So he's definitely a piece that you want to have. He kicked his extra points fairly well, 9 out of 10, 90%. But yeah, he was nearly perfect for us. So I'm looking forward to the season next year. But I'm going to kind of go through some games and just talk about the roller coaster that went down for this team. So the first game of the season, we're playing the Chargers, and everybody's excited because it's a Sunday game. I believe it was like a later game. And we lost that game 20-16. If you remember, it was Antonio Gibson who fumbled that gave the ball to the Chargers, and they were able to win this game. I mean, we limit these guys to 20 points. Outside that touchdown that they got, really you can say 13 points or 14 points, but it is what it is. I thought that was a winnable game. Had we won that game, it really could have changed the outcome of this season. The Giants game, that was a game I went to sports bar to watch this game, and I was excited because it was a Sunday and then a Thursday game. And if you bought tickets to both games, being from out of town, you had fun Sunday through Friday or however long you stayed. We won that game. It was an exciting game. Dustin Hopkins missed a field goal. He comes back, kicks a field goal. Taylor Heineke played unbelievable, hitting Ricky Seals-Jones. I mean, that was a game. And now you're thinking, okay, at 1-1, we might be on to something. This might be the year that we actually make some noise. We're thinking that Taylor Heineke is a franchise quarterback at this point. Everybody is excited. Nothing can go wrong, right? The very next week, we played the Buffalo Bills. And this was the game where they demolished the football team. They came at us, defensive pressure. We couldn't stop Josh Allen. He goes off. On top of that, I mean, we had one splash play out of Antonio Gibson when it was a screen pass, and he runs for 73 yards. I mean, that, outside of that, we didn't do anything. And then we saw that Taylor Heineke is a quarterback that cannot bring you back in terms of being down by a lot, being down by more than 2 touchdowns. I don't think Taylor Heineke brings you back, even though we've seen some comebacks from Taylor Heineke, but then it's against mediocre talent like the Giants. So we lost that game at Buffalo. It was tough. Then we go to the Falcons, and then at this point, we're 1-2. I'm like, man, we got to beat the Falcons. If we can't beat the Falcons, the season is over. And I know it's week 4, but I'm like, the season is over. We played the Falcons. We played really, really good. J.D. McKissick had that amazing touchdown. He also had an amazing play versus that Giants game as well. We beat the Falcons, and Terry, caught that ball. Taylor Heineke played his heart out. And that's kind of like when you see Terry having fun. That Giants game and that Falcons game, Terry was like unstoppable. And it's kind of showing you what Terry can be, but it's hard to be that when, I think we lost Logan Thomas in one of those games, and you don't really have a wide receiver 2. You have a quarterback who's limited. You have a quarterback that can do a lot of things. So it's like at this point, we're 2-2. I'm excited because we're 500 after 4 weeks. But then it's kind of like, okay, we're going to play the Saints. We're playing the Saints. We're playing well. And then that play before halftime happened. And that just kind of just drained all the energy I had. At this point, we lose to the Saints, a very winnable game. Jameis Winston is looking like, Aaron Rodgers out there. And that happens. We lose, right? Then the very next game, we played the Kansas City Chiefs. That first half, Washington played really, really good. And mind you, the Chiefs were struggling. The Chiefs have been struggling all season up until that point. They ended up beating us 31-13. I'm like, come on, man. It is what it is there. You're not expecting to beat the Chiefs, right? You lose to the Chiefs. The very next game, you play the Packers. Another winnable game. Another game where they put together some plays defensively. And I really felt we got after Aaron Rodgers. I really felt we could have won that game. It was a play or two that just kind of just flipped the whole game. That was a game where Taylor Heineke ran. Instead of diving into the end zone, he slid into the end zone. Then they don't give him that touchdown. And I believe it was a game that it was like 4th and 1 or on 4th down, we went for it a lot instead of, kicking field goals. So it was that debate on if you kick field goals, you win the game. But if you go for touchdowns, is that being aggressive to, try to win? So that was a game that I felt was winnable. We lost. I mean, it's the Green Bay Packers. It's Lambeau, and then Taylor Heineke jumping into the, doing like the whole Lambeau leap. I didn't like that, but it is what it is. Then you go to the next game versus the Broncos at Denver. And this is a game that we should have won because up until that point, I believe the Broncos were like a 500 team. They were going back and forth. I believe the Broncos were 3-4 at that time. And I'm like, man, the Broncos are not that good. Teddy Bridgewater, whatever. We played a good game defensively. But we just could not stop them. They were able to beat us 17-10. So when you go back and look at these 4 losses, we scored 22 versus the Saints. We scored 13 versus the Chiefs. We scored 10 versus the Packers. We scored 10 versus the Broncos. And that was the Taylor Heineke sucks narrative, right? Rightfully so. I mean, we can't put up points. 3 weeks in a row, we had 13 or less points. That's unacceptable. Outside of that blowout game versus the Bills, and then, beating the Falcons, who were terrible, we couldn't really score the ball. So at this point, I believe the team is 2-4. The team is really, really, really bad. No, it's 2-6. The team is 2-6 at this point. To be honest, I'm like, the season is over. I'm like, man, you know what? Lose out the rest of the games. Let's go ahead and get a top 5 draft pick. That's how I felt about the whole situation. And at this point, I believe I stopped doing podcasts and stuff. I believe I stopped doing everything when it pertains to, winning and, having fun doing podcasts. Because as a fan, I'm not getting paid for this. So as a fan, I can't do these podcasts when we're not winning. I should be consistent, but at the same time, it was like, it wasn't fun at all. So we end up going on a 4-game win streak to improve our record to 6-6. I was shocked. We beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers by a last drive that lasted over 10 minutes. Taylor Heineke was unbelievable. We beat the Buccaneers 29-19. Not only did we shut down the Buccaneers, we were able to put up points on the Buccaneers. That was the most beautiful game that I've been able to see as a Washington football fan. Remember, it was 2 years, and prior to beating the undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers, this was probably either the best or the second best win for the Washington football team at that time. We go ahead and we play the Panthers. I'm like, you got to beat the Panthers. With the whole Ron Rivera thing, we go ahead and we beat them, 27-21. I'm like, okay. Then we go ahead and we play Seattle. Mind you, Russell Wilson just came back, but we all knew that Russell Wilson was not 100%. And this is at home. We beat them 17-15. They had a chance to tie the game with a 2-point conversion. I'm glad that it fell short. We ended up getting that victory. Everybody's excited again. We're like 1 game away from being 500. The next game was the Vegas Raiders at Vegas. And to me, Vegas was a good team all year. What happened in this game was a defensive struggle. We were able to put together enough drives or enough scoring plays to, win this game. We won this game 17-15. So 2 weeks in a row of winning 17-15. At this point, we're 6-6. I'm talking my talk. I'm walking my walk. I'm excited. Everybody's excited. I'm back to podcasting again. Everybody's back to content creating and doing this and that. And then we go on another 4-game losing streak. It's over. At this point, it's over. You lose to the Cowboys, which we should have won that game at home. It was 27-20. I don't want to get into the ins and outs of that game, but that was a game that we were supposed to win. Matter of fact, we started coming back in this game with all of our quarterback issues and COVID this, COVID that, this person here, that person there. I mean, it was just a mess this season with, practice squad quarterbacks and just all this mess. We almost won that game. We almost came back. We lost the game 27-20. And that was a game where Dallas led by maybe 27-3 or something. They had a huge lead. I can't remember how they started the game, but they had a huge lead. Washington came all the way back to make us a respectable game. Then we lose to the Eagles at the Eagles, a game that I felt like we should have won. And that's when, the team was carrying their benches from stadium to stadium, which was dumb. Don't carry your benches from stadium to stadium, and then you come out and you're taking L's and L's and L's. So after losing to the Eagles, we go back to Dallas, and this game was a bloodbath. Like, we had literally no players. We had practice squad players. We had G League players. We had players that had the kind of skill set that I have, which is not much. We lost that game 56-14, and that possibly could have been one of the worst losses that I've ever experienced being a Washington football fan. This loss was worse than the loss earlier this year to the Bills. I mean, 56-14. They beat us on every single aspect of the game. It was really nothing that we can do. Then we play the Eagles again, and at this point, it's like, who do we have? Who don't we have? Pretty much the season is lost at this point. And we lost that game 20-16. And then the final game of the year, it was at the Giants. The Giants really didn't want to win this game. Neither did Washington. But one of the trash 2 teams had to win this game in Week 18, and Washington came out victorious with 22-7 score. Like I said, terrible season. We ended up 7-10. Ended up third in the NFC behind the 9-8 Eagles. That 9-8 record was very attainable for the Washington football team. We lost 2 games or 3 games that we were not supposed to lose whatsoever. It was tough. I'm not gonna lie. Playing the NFC East, 5 out of the last games was tough. It was tough. I mean, you're playing the Dallas Cowboys twice. Everybody brags about Dallas and their 12-5 record. They beat a lot of bum teams. They might have swept the entire NFC East. So if you have 12 wins, and 6 of those came out of the NFC East, the NFC least, what does that say about the other 6 wins that you got? So obviously, wins and playoffs, lost, but we're not here to talk about Dallas. We're just here to talk about how trash the Dallas Cowboys are. They think that they're so great, but they're not. So this was a season that was a roller coaster. I mean, it was a roller coaster season. I've never been a part of, as a fan, I've never been part of a team or a season where you lose 4 games straight, you win 4 games straight, and you lose 4 games straight. That's an emotional roller coaster because you're thinking you're out of it and you're back in it, and now you're really, really out of it. But then you win that last game. It didn't matter. You didn't want to win that last game, but you win the last game. It doesn't matter, and then it kind of hurts your draft position. I would have been better off with the team putting in all their young players, putting in guys that they haven't really seen, treat it as a preseason game. Yeah, you play to win because that's what they're going to do, but you give an opportunity to all the young guys. That's what you should have done. That's what the Giants were able to do. And they improved themselves into having a better draft position. They have like 2 draft picks in the top 10. That's beautiful. I wish Washington would have been in the top 10, but then winning that game knocked us out of the top 10. So we're picking at 11. It's going to be an interesting draft. It's going to be an interesting season. There's tons of players that I'm looking at. But like I said, this was not one of those episodes where I'm talking about the plan. There's a lot that can happen between now and the regular season. I'm here for it. Questions like, is Landon Collins coming back? Is Bobby McCain coming back? What happens with Deron Payne? Does the Washington football team find its franchise quarterback? All these questions will be answered on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z. Nah, just kidding. But yeah, appreciate you guys tuning in. Once again, this is the Talking Sports with Manny channel. Please like, please subscribe, and please share. And you're listening to the Backrow Commanders Show. I will catch you guys on the next episode, and we out.